Well, hello to episode 2 of the Sunday Extra Podcast, season 4. This, I think, could easily become the best episode of the year so far.
So far. You're saying we botched last week?
I'm not saying, but incremental improvement. I think we could shoot for that. If you were not at church on Sunday, you missed some exciting stuff, kids. I know all 3 of you were at church on Sunday. I'm talking to the people who we can't see right now, who are in all the electrons. But we had a great update to our Christmas offering. I think we were going to mention this last week, but time was what it was. The goal has been $155,000. Sunday, what we showed was that we were up to $177,000 pulled together. It is higher today at the moment of this recording, and hopefully it's even higher by the time.
The moment of this recording, you want me to tell you what it is?
Yes. Go for it.
It is almost $194,000.
Oh, wow.
It's even higher from earlier this morning.
When we come in over the day.
So yeah, the checks from the weekend got added in. We didn't have that added this morning, but we're rapidly approaching the 200,000 mark.
Awesome. And so everything you were saying, Matt, over 155 is going specifically as seed money for the Vision 2028. And just in case one of our viewers or listeners wasn't there on Sunday, can you do a quick overview of what Vision 2028 is?
Yeah, so in 2018, the year that we turned 40 as a church, we got together, the staff, some key leaders, and we charted out a 10-year vision. So that would be, 2018, 10 years, 2028. We were 40. That's the year we turned 50. We also knew that in the middle of that, there'd be some kind of a leadership transition that would take place. Our founding pastor would be retiring in that 10-year window. So we wanted to lay a path that we could be moving on as a church over the next 10 years. So our Vision 2028 is in the year that we turn 50. We want to start what we're now calling a new work, because one of the things we're aggressively seeking the Lord's direction on this year is, should we start a campus, another campus of Hope Church, or a completely new independent church? Whatever we do, though, is going to be more localized here in the metroplex somewhere. And we have a long history as a church over the first 40 years of training and sending out people very broadly, very widely, to start churches all over the country, and missionaries to go to, I think it's like almost 40 different countries around the world. So we were the first 40 years kind of sending very broadly, and then so we moved towards 50 being a little more localized. So this year, as we prepare for that, we said, a portion of the Christmas offering of that 155 will go towards seed money. But then we said anything above and beyond will go towards that seed money. So at this point, take 194 minus 155, and that's, kind of where we're at right now to get to set aside for that. And what I told everybody on Sunday, we don't yet know if it's going to be a church or a campus. We don't yet know exactly where it's going to be. We don't yet know who the leader is going to be. But what we do know is it's going to take resources. It's going to cost money. And so God's been, allowing us to lay the foundations, having the resources ahead of needing them. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we say this every Sunday from the stage, but, the offering window started back in mid-November, and it goes to the end of January of 26. So if you haven't had a chance to contribute or participate in that, the window is still open. And if you would join us in prayer for now until the end of the month, that all of the money that God intends for us to get would arrive.
Let me just say a quick comment about that. I mentioned this on Sunday briefly, but I don't think I said it as well as hopefully I'll say now. So some people might look at that and be like, well, why didn't we just celebrate and call it done?
Yeah.
In fact, this year, this as far as I can tell, looking back, at least in the last 4 or 5 years, and maybe ever, this is the first time we have exceeded our goal before 12/31. So the offering started mid-November, and so say about 5-6 weeks there, God allowed us to reach and even exceed our goal before the new year. And so in some ways it'd be really easy to be like, all right, great, let's call it done, finished that first weekend in January. But looking at this, what we've seen over the years, and what we really challenge people to really pray and consider, what would God have them give? And some people have the means to write a check for the full amount, and some of those checks are large, and there's been a few like really generous gifts this year that's been really exciting. But the vast majority of it is a little bit given over time. And so if, I say if for nobody else, we're going to leave it open for me, because, I can't write a check for thousands and thousands of dollars just right now to give to the offering, but I can give a little bit over the entire time. And, we would actually be cutting short if someone's really prayed about what they feel like they want God to give, and then we end the offering before because we hit the goal, well, then we're actually denying them the opportunity to give what they feel like God has asked them to give. So, so how big is the number going to get? I don't know. I mean, it's like, let's see what God can do. In fact, we say, we pray that God would do beyond what we can even imagine. But we are going to keep it open till the end of January, like we said, so that those who have been giving, a little bit every week, and we get a lot of people that they set an automatic gift every Sunday during the Christmas offering period. They're going to give 10, 15, 20, 50, $100, whatever it is. And so we're going to allow that entire time to expire till we get to the end of January, so that people can give the full amount that they feel like God is asking them to give, because we don't want to stop what God's doing. So that's why, if it feels strange, why we keep celebrating, and why don't we just give each other high fives and say it's done, is because, well, obviously God's not done. And so we're going to wait and give the whole window.
So a second thing that was out of the ordinary for our normal Sunday worship service is that we licensed, I guess he was licensed in November, but we presented Jake Myers with the license. So he started today. You don't know this because he's off camera, but he's right over there.
Hi, Jake.
Hi, Jake.
Jake.
This was his first day as a associate pastor.
Wait, go ahead and come back here, Jake. Just in the middle and stand. And hopefully Rachel can tell us if you need to duck or if we can see you. Get your head down a little bit lower. Right here. Frame it right here. All right. They can't hear you because you don't have a mic, but they can see you.
Frame between the microphones.
So this is Jake Myers. All right.
Woo.
Excited to join the team. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right. We'll let you go back and sit down. We decided we would, before we throw him in the fire, we'd let him watch.
What are you getting into?
Watch what it looks like.
Yeah. So
watch us get burned before you throw him in the fire.
So I guess a question that some may be asking. So we've not, to my knowledge, and I may be 2 weeks behind you, Matt, on my tenure at Hope Church on staff. I don't know that we've ever had a discipleship pastor. So what is that? For the folks at home, what types of things does a discipleship pastor do?
Yeah, so
other than attend podcast recordings.
Yeah, sit in the background, Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing is, since I started in May of 2020, following our founder, I've been, just praying and looking at, okay, God, here's where we've been, and here's where we're going, and there's natural changes. Last year we had a couple of long-term retirements. So just as we move forward in time, one of the things my job as lead pastor is to look at where are we going, how can we accomplish the mission today, but also organize ourselves to move into the future. So this year, starting at the beginning of this year, we've kind of reorganized the staff, at least at the top level. So we have, I kind of like to think of it as 4 main streams. So we have the weekend services and sort of everything that goes around the weekend happening, and that's your responsibility. And so there's the worship team and the worship services, and then looking at all the hospitality teams and how everything fits together. And then another stream is our operations, and that's what Jeremy is over. That includes things like the building and the facility and the safety team, and then there's some other things also sprinkled in there as well. Luke has been over, and there's a few things going to come off of your plate because you kind of stepped in interim, but Luke is over the next generation, our kids, our students. He really is the one that connects with Christian Impact, which is a student ministry that we partner with. There are church-based campus ministries, and then there are, more independent parachurch, and we kind of have a hybrid model. So Jake is stepping in this role as discipleship pastor. That's kind of the fourth stream, and what we're going to put under that is how do we help people grow and develop as disciples of Jesus. So that will start with some missions and outreach. So the missions part will include missions opportunities that we have locally, nationally, and internationally, and obviously local missions is a part of our outreach, reaching the community. It's also going to include things like helping people connect with hope. So from coming in from the first time guest, helping shepherd people along. That's something Jeremy had been doing in his previous role before we kind of reorganized rather. And then the discipleship part is how do we help people grow? So that includes all different kinds of groups. And we have all kinds of groups here. We have connection groups. We have community groups. We have discipleship groups. There's training programs and training groups and just how we're helping people grow. So that's the thing that Jake will wake up every morning thinking about how to do that, how to make it better. And Jake's a go-getter. One of the things I'm excited, he's very humble. He won't tell you. For the last couple of years, he started a new clinic of physical therapy where he had been a physical therapist for a number of years, but then he started the clinic as the clinic manager and won all kinds of awards. So he's built organizations before. Also, if we feel tense and we need to get some kinks worked out, he's the guy, that's right there. So we're excited about that part. You finish those long sermons, and you're like, I need to work on me here. But anyway, so that's what he's going to be. That's the stream he's going to be working in. So right now, this spring, he just started literally today, and is probably feeling a little overwhelmed right now, but he's got a smile on his face. So we're going to be over the next, several weeks, and then even the spring, transitioning some things, and he'll be onboarding and coming on, and then, we'll probably, when we get to the summer to the fall launch, the training wheels will be off. So.
So he got a license, because you have to have those.
You need to drive.
You need to drive, to hunt, all of those things. So I guess you need a fishing license. Fishers of men. Here we go. So you need a license. I'm sorry.
What you did there.
So sorry. Some may have also heard of like an ordained pastor, an ordained minister. Or, what are the differences between the two, or are they the same? Let us know.
Yeah, I think here's the easiest way to describe it. In our stream of church, in our ministry philosophy, it's kind of a two-step process. So first of all, you need to be licensed to the ministry to be able to perform some of the official duties. So like in order to, not just anybody, nowadays you can go get some kind of like internet certificate to do,
do anything.
One little side thing here. Somebody once, I think they went and got like the online certificate, and then it was like for like $10 more, they could also be an ordained Jedi master.
Yeah.
So they're like, I can do a wedding as a Jedi master, and I'm just like, I don't even know what to think about that. But the part in the marriage was like, by the power vested in me by the state of whatever, you've got to have a license. to do that. So it's the entry point, and the way our heritage, what we do is when somebody steps into ministry, they make that leap from just participating in ministry that we're all called to do as followers of Jesus, but becoming a staff member, especially becoming a pastor. There's a license that is issued, and what we do, our deacon council, back in November, Jake, and this is what we've done for a number of guys over the years. Jake came and he shared his call to ministry, his general call. He shared his sense to join the staff at Hope, and then they asked him some questions about things. And it's not as deep and rigid as maybe an ordination council, which I'll talk about in just a second. But they affirmed him, and that's in the end they affirmed two things. One is he has definitely been called to the ministry, best we can tell, and we affirm to license him as this starting initial point. So you get a license when you first become a pastor, and then what we've typically done in our heritage, is ordination comes later after there's some proof, if you will. There's like, it's not just we affirm that you are called to do this. This is definitely what God has called you to do. We've seen the fruit. We've seen the evidence, the ministry fruit. So like, in our case, I think it was around 2006 when we got licensed, and then it was a few years later in 2000, I believe it was 13, where a handful of us got ordained, and then that was also at that same time somebody that had been training in the Antioch Project, who was going out to join the staff of another church in our network. Several of us got ordained. They got licensed because we were putting our affirmation on this person who was going to become a pastor, in this new church. That was a way we could send them with our affirmation. So that comes later, and usually there's more of it's a little more rigorous in the sense that
the ordination.
Yeah. There was a council, and there were questions, and it wasn't just share the gospel. There were these more deeper theological things to explain, and this is where if somebody's going to be ordained, typically even what can happen is if you're going to be the lead pastor or have a major staff role, at some point you want to be ordained. And then so just recently back in the fall, churches in the Valley, they had been in the process of trying to determine who their next lead pastor was going to be when Pastor Randy needed to step down for health reasons. And so when they selected their pastor, they weren't yet ordained, and so there was a council. I had an opportunity to go out, and it's a lot more fun being on the council than on the hot seat. But just asking a handful of questions. And then again, it's an additional affirmation that I think is particularly important for those that are in a lead pastor or going to plant a church or something like that. So you're just starting the journey, Jake. So we started with the licensing, and I know Brian and I are ordained. Are you ordained?
I'm not.
You're not, okay. And Luke's not. So maybe in a couple of years we'll have another ordination.
Hey!
And it's also my understanding is in order to be called reverend, you have to also be ordained, and there's part of the title with that. So you can be pastor, but
So how do you get to become right reverend?
That's kind of a whole nother.
That's a whole other thing.
We won't go there today.
Okay, so with that, I think you raised potentially a question for some people. And I had a really good conversation with a guy on Saturday that would be in the same ballpark. He was called to ministry later in life, so it was his mid-30s is when he realized that he's actually called into ministry. So the call isn't time-bound, and the call could happen anytime. And so I think you more or less said, if you feel like this might be possibly where God is leading, we're going to have an event at the end of February, just kind of talk about what would a call to vocational ministry be like. And so I don't know if you want to go into any more detail about what someone could expect from that meeting.
I mean, God calls people at all different times in all different ways to do all different things. So, one of the things that, it's kind of get a little bit ahead of ourselves, but one of the things I talked about in the message was we're actually all called to be servant ambassadors. So it's not like, well, I'm saved, and then he might call me to participate. We're saved from our sins, and we're saved for good works that God has prepared in advance. That's everybody. You're a follower of Jesus, you're called to be a part of the mission. But by and large, most people are called to represent, to be a servant ambassador wherever they live, work, and play. And then, look, you're going to love this. I just heard this. I was listening to a friend of mine. He got sick, actually had to go to the hospital. Everything was fine. And so he missed doing his end of the year, beginning of the year, sermon, kind of look back, look forward. And so I watched it yesterday afternoon, and his thing. So he added a fourth one that I think we might need to steal.
Oh, live, work, and play. And
it was live, work, parent, and play.
Oh, yes.
And you're doing it where you're parenting because as you're relating to other, think about it, you're relating to your kids' activities and sports teams and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I liked the second P there. I don't know if it's going to stick, but we're all called to do that. And then our job actually in vocational ministry, and we see this in Ephesians 4, is we're called to equip the saints. So, in a sense, when you answer the call to vocational ministry, you actually do less what we would consider personal ministry, and it's more ad ministry. And the major job is the equipping. So this is where sometimes people they get they misunderstand it, and they think like, well, a pastor should come and do everything. Pastor's here to serve all my needs, and there's an element of that. But what I tell people in our membership classes, I'm not saying I'm not going to come to the hospital, but I'm saying if I come, you're probably in a pretty bad way. And the people in your group, the people that you're doing community with, they can get there a lot faster than I can. So this expectation that the pastor is going to do everything. No, the pastors and the staff actually equip people to do the work of the ministry. So this vocational ministry is more in the equipping role. And what we want to do is we want to equip people to whatever God has called them to do. So the vast majority of people, there's one of those like wasps kind of floating around. Yeah. Rachel's got her shoe off. She's ready to get it. Get it. All right. I don't know how they get in, Jeremy. I get them in my office every so often, but anyway.
The black ones are harmless, but that was a yellow one.
Yeah, that was.
I don't like the yellow one.
That was one of the stinger
yellow ones. Yeah. So, did you get it? Okay. Good job. Hey, discipleship pastor.
Way to go.
Taking care.
I think it was one day I walked into this room and there were several dead on their backs. I'm like, where? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. They like to read, I think. So. So what we want to do is we want to help people that God might be speaking to them. They're sensing the call to go beyond, doing ministry, but actually leave their career, whether it's as a teacher in the marketplace. And one of the things I loved is actually your daughter. So shout out to Lindy. Woo-hoo. Came up and asked me after the first service. She's like, "Is there an age limit?" And I was like, you know what? There's not. There's no age limit. So I'm like, you want to come? Come. Tell your friends. Because I believe God, he calls people, some at an early age. I mean, I know guys that are pastors today that they sensed that call to ministry in middle school or high school. Now, they didn't obviously become a pastor when they were 14, but God began to speak to them, and then he confirmed it. He affirmed it in other people, and that's where they are today. So really what this lunch meeting that we're having is all about is we want to talk about what does the call to ministry look like. We're going to share some testimonies of some different people who are called to ministry. That was for a number of years, I did this podcast, the Ministry Mentor podcast, where really what I was trying to do was I was just interviewing all kinds of people in all different kinds of ministry, because we know of like the calls of some of the really big, maybe the really big names. And then even you look in the Bible and you look at Moses and Paul, and they had like pretty amazing calls. I mean, if God's going to speak to you in the burning bush, or Jesus is coming and blinding you, right, and having a conversation with you. But then you look at the assignment that Moses had and Paul had. they had to know that they know that they know that God had called them to do this really hard thing. Yeah. And then there's what I'll call like the tens of thousands of, less extravagant, even uninteresting calls that God places on all kinds of people. And at this point, I'm not saying just a pastor. Like, he calls men and women to serve him in that way as their vocation. So we want to help people, get a sense of what a different calls look like. And my call to ministry was different from your call, was different from your call, and I'm hopefully we can have one of our mission partners. We can maybe get a video of them to use in this meeting. So we need to add that to the list. Hey. What did it look like for them to be called into missions? And then just talk about it, and then give some next steps. And of course, we have the Antioch Project that for those that, they are called and they're ready to start to train for that. That's one of the ways we equip people specifically for ministry. So I'm excited. We got a couple people signed up already. We also wanted to give a kind of a long lead time. So, it's about 6 weeks out, and, we don't want to just drop that on everybody and say, hey, stick around today, but to really encourage people to think and pray through. And if you're like, I don't know, I'd say still come. So you either know or you think it might be, and then come and learn more about it.
Yeah. And just as a side note, I'm guessing the Ministry Mentor podcast is still findable.
I think so. Out
in the world. If you are wondering what a call to ministry looks like and feels like, I would highly recommend doing a, what do they call that? Where you just watch a bunch of shows at once. Binge the Ministry Mentor podcast. I think one of the coolest takeaways for me listening to that was legit how boring the calls were. Because it really not normalized it. I don't mean that to take away God's hand in the middle of it, but it made them so unspectacular that, I could be called. I don't have to be an amazing person to be called. I could just be Joe Ordinary, and also God call me into something. So if you haven't checked that out yet, you should. You get to see the thumbnail of the show is a much younger Pastor Matt, and it's good.
Less bearded than I am like today.
20 or 30 interviews or something?
I think he did more than that. I remember I actually binged it. All right. when I was trying to figure out, like, was God calling me or not. I remember going through, and I think he got like, more than that. I think it was like in the 40s or 50s. Okay. So.
And when I say unspectacular, they are entertaining shows. The stories are good, but it is normal people who are doing normal things for Jesus, and then out of that, they realize God is calling them into this. So it's like there's a old commercial of this of Palmolive where it was at a nail salon. And I guess I've never been to a nail salon, but this person was having their nails like soaking in a bowl of liquid, I guess to soften up the nails. And the ladies are talking back and forth across the table about Palmolive, because that's what you do when you're at the nail salon. You're talking about dish soap. But they were saying like, that sounds great. I wish I could try some Palmolive. And the nail lady goes, you're already soaking in it. Like, what? But I think that's often true. Like, you're in the middle of serving Jesus already. You're already soaking in it, and out of that, God calls you. So, so check out the Am I Called, I think is what it's called, on the 22nd about vocational ministry if you're in the slightest bit interested in finding out more about that. So this was week 2 of a 3-week series on becoming a 3C disciple. We looked at the last 2 C's of being connected and contributing. And I'm just going to go over a brief overview in case you missed the sermon on Sunday. We're all called, as you said, to be connected, not just to serve, but we're all called to be connected to one another. I think one of the nugget line in the back of my mind was that you don't attend a body, you belong to a body, and the church family is part of a body. And so it's not optional for Christian life, it's essential. I think we see in the early church, which you can read in the book of Acts, a lot of what healthy community looks like, being devoted to the Bible, biblical fellowship, being hospitable to one another, praying together. And this produces spiritual growth, joy, generosity, and a powerful witness to the world. I think there is that thing of like, what is my attendance at church or my participation in church? What does that really do to the broader community? I don't completely know, but God's in charge and God is fueling the whole thing. But it is a powerful witness to the world. Being connected means that we are shaped in those relationships. One of the benefits of being around people is that God uses those relationships. Like he used the Bible verse of Proverbs 27:17 of iron sharpens iron. Sometimes we get into conversation with people and how they respond to something. It sharpens us. And maybe there wasn't a confrontation. I think sometimes we're like, oh, there's that grinding or there's sparks, whatever. I didn't like it. Sometimes, Luke, you may just say something like, oh, well, that's interesting. And I'll think about that. And that shaped me. Sometimes it's confrontational. But there's all kinds of ways that just being in relationship with one another really helps our spiritual formation, and we're on mission together. We talked about this concept of doing life together that is beyond just casual acquaintances. It's not just knowing names. It's really knowing what's going on in a person's life, what has gone on in their past, where God is leading them, all those kinds of things, and being on mission together throughout time. And then we're also called to be contributing to Jesus's mission. We're saved from sin, but we're also saved for something, and that is this purpose, this mission, this rescue mission that God has for his believers to restore people through Jesus. So we are sent by Jesus. Every Christian is sent by Jesus to make disciples. Every Christian is gifted in some way by the Holy Spirit to serve others, and we are called to cheerfully give back to God with our resources, recognizing that everything we have anyway comes from the Lord. And every disciple is becoming a servant ambassador. And we looked at it's both servant and ambassador. I love that chart, Matt, of if you were just a servant, this is what would be missing. And if you're just an ambassador, this is what would be missing. So we need to be both a servant and an ambassador for Jesus. And then finally, disciples do God's work in the world. Scripture says, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. And love that whole thing about who likes feet. And particularly in the first century when they're all dusty and grimy and sewage systems were not awesome. How beautiful could those feet possibly be? But if they're bringing good news, they might be the most beautiful feet you saw that day. So we get to be the bearers of God's best news of Jesus and his transformation powers. So our feet, no matter what your feet look like today, if you need a pedicure or whatever the issues are, if you're bringing the good news of Jesus Christ, you got great looking feet. So we ended the message with a simple challenge of, kind of where are you right now? Do you need to be committed to Jesus? Do you need to become more connected to his people? We've got groups for the spring. Our signups are starting on Sunday, so that'd be a great next step for being connected. Or do you need to start contributing to his mission in some way? So we've been looking at the know-be-do triangle in relationship to all these things. So I guess I don't want to go too much farther because nobody wants to listen to my voice this long. But there was a lot going on in this message. We're kind of packing two sermons into one. So getting practical, what didn't make it in the sermon that needed to be in the sermon, but because of time we couldn't talk about on Sunday that we can talk about here?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things. I tried to balance the looking at it at a higher level to try to get a sense of what we're talking about, but then getting practical in as many places as I can. But I would say I would have liked to have investigated more just those passages on the imagery that we see about the body. You know, I listed them all in the handout, and we looked at a couple of snippets, but just really to be able to sort of mine that out a little bit more and see, really how Paul describes it. I wanted to say even more about the doing life together. I tried to, again, be real practical, and we did get into some weeds, but I think there's a lot more that can be said about that, because I think, frankly, it's just it's a difficult thing for us to understand, particularly as adults. How do adults actually make friends? And stuff. So I would have liked to have gone a little further with that. The one another's, I think maybe in one service, I don't even know if I said it. And then the other service, I did mention it, but I mean, there's so much we could talk about with the one another's. And then, I showed that screen of the spiritual gifts, and I intentionally, didn't want to take the whole sermon in a different direction, but there's a lot that could be said about spiritual gifts and trying to understand that as well. Because I think sometimes, because we don't understand gifts and how they relate to us contributing, then we sort of just hang around in the back, and we miss out on a lot of opportunities. So those are, some of the things that maybe we scratched the surface, but could have gone a lot further on.
Well, let's dig into some of those, particularly on the doing life together. I think the moment when, for all the introverts in the room, he's like, because I've known all kinds of people like this, and I'm probably like this. No, I know I'm like this naturally. I think by familiarity with people at Hope, I would probably be a little more bold because I'm familiar. But if I was new or not on staff or whatever, I would totally be this. I might want to hang out with you, but you're going to have to ask me. But now I'm mad at you because you didn't ask me, and no one, you just kind of get in your head about some stuff. So you asked everybody to raise their hand if they would like, if somebody asked them they would like to go out to lunch with somebody, like after services or something, and a ton of people in both services raise their hand. You're like, okay, look around, just ask somebody, it's fine. But let's talk more, I guess. We have the opportunity. What, in that concept of doing life together, what does that look like as adults? How do adults make friends? All of those things.
So I want to share a couple of things from a book. I don't want to tell you what the book is. I don't want to tell you the author. It's because it's one of those, it's kind of a self-helpy book where there's some good nuggets in it, but then they're way off in a lot of places, and it can get confusing and can get muddy. So these couple of things I want to share, these aren't original ideas to me, but I think they're really helpful. And this is a lot of times what we see, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, that a lot of times people will do a really good job of diagnosing the problem. They see really clearly what the problem is, but then their prescription to fix it is where they kind of get off, right? So I think they do a good job of describing some of the problem here. So I'm just, I've got the book up here on my laptop, and I'm just going to kind of pick a couple of things out. But they talk about how friendships change dramatically when you reach adulthood. And we don't ever, we actually don't get trained for that. We don't get prepared for it. And then what happens is we can feel isolated, and we look around and we're like, why don't I have friends like I used to have, and all of that. And so they kind of refer to this as the great scattering, where it was like, once you finish school, it's like people they move on. And I've experienced that in my own life, where I can think of, what I would call, my best friend from 7th grade through college. And we were roommates all 4 years in college. And I mean, we did everything together. But then we graduated from college, and he moved to a different state. And, we were texting last summer, about 15 minutes. He actually texted me a picture of our old dorm room. And, he's got a selfie, and there was another guy in the picture, and he's like, hey, does this look familiar? And I'm like, yeah, that's our dorm room. And so he had gone back to our university for some kind of special reunion for this program that he was in. So it wasn't like a large scale reunion. And I guess he went back and found our room. Wow. And, so we texted them for like maybe 15, 20 minutes and kind of caught up. So there was no falling out, and we've seen each other a few times over the last 20 something years, But we just kind of went our separate ways, and that happens, and people they don't talk about it. We don't get prepared for it. But when you were little, you're in school, and a lot of us here homeschool, so our kids are feeling a different experience. But we were joking earlier about the wonderful public high school education that we received, and you're all in the same place at the same time, and you're together for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week with this whole group of people, and it's just ready-made. You look around, and here's where all the people are, and everybody's on the same schedule. And I think this is one of the things, so I'm just going to read this. It says, from birthdays to graduations to the exact same vacation schedule, you participated in the same clubs, same activities, same sports, same classes. It made you feel subconsciously like there was a big group of people moving through life with you, and you were a part of it. And that's, that describes perfectly, at least what my growing up was like, going through school. So the first 20 years, they say, your life is sort of structured, and friendships are planned for you by your parents, by your school systems, by your sports team, by your college dormitories, by fraternities, sororities, extracurricular activity. It's all made for you, easy, same age, everybody going through life at the exact same time. And it was like, yeah, that's what life was like. So then what happens is you believe that your whole life is going to be that way. It's always going to be that way. And then one day you graduate from college, and then this great scattering that they call happens. So, and just acknowledging the reality that it's harder to make friends as an adult. So if you, first of all, if you feel like, man, I feel like it's hard to make friends, well, then you're normal. It's normal. We got a whole lot less time. And so I used a couple of things. They have these 3 pillars of friendship, which is similar to what I said, but it's a little bit different. So they talk about these 3 pillars of proximity, timing, and energy. Okay, so it's a little different than what I shared, but they say what happens is when friends drift away, fall apart, or lose touch, it's because one or more of these 3 essential pillars are missing. And most of the time, adult friendships fade, not for personal reasons, but because one of these pillars ends up just kind of going away. And so the proximity, which I did talk about proximity, is you have to be physically near people. There's this illusion of, I don't know how many Facebook friends you have. I don't know how many I have. I lose track, but I'm like, they're not my friends. Sorry if you're my Facebook friend, but especially ones we haven't seen or talked to each other. So proximity really matters. You've got to be physically near someone in order to do life with them. And then, so this, I don't know if this was, I guess the University of Kansas is different than K-State, right?
Very different.
So
it's actually completely different.
We got two K-State alumni here, all right? But this was a University of Kansas study. And listen to this. They cite this, and I found this really fascinating. To become a, quote, casual friend, you have to spend 74 hours with somebody. To become a close friend, you spend over 200 hours with someone. And then, so then the author says, let's put that, in context for us. So in high school, you clock 200 hours every 5 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
That's why you can have so many close friendships. But think about, we talk about groups. If groups get together, and let's just say you're 90 minutes a week. Even if you're in a community group and you meet for the whole year, that's not going to it's not going to be 200 hours. And so I think one of the things what we say with our groups is we don't promise best friends. Best friends can develop out of our groups. But one of the functions of being in a group is being in a community, being near, being in proximity with other people who are all trying to grow, walk with Jesus, and grow together. So, I'm very clear. If you're listening, we do not promise that you will find your best friend, but you might. But that's not like what we're promising. So, how do you get to 200 hours? that takes a long time. You know, even if you worked out an hour, you know, with somebody, that's 200 workouts, right? That's a lot. So then it says, according to the American Time study, scientists found that from the age of 21 through 60, you spend more time with your coworkers than you do your family and your friends combined. And I would say, you know, if you're working a 40, 50, 60 hour a week, that's true. That's reality. But then here's why it breaks down. If you go to their second pillar of timing, then timing is, do you have things in common with people in your life? And, you know, even this group here, we're in different stages of life, right? So that's why you're not automatically best friends with all your coworkers, even though you spend so much time with them. People are in different seasons of life, and that's really great. Now, also in our groups, you know, some groups are more closer affinity based, like if we've got like young professionals, or you've got, you know, parents of young children, or Jeremy, you're leading, you know, the group of retired guys right now. So you're the only non-retired one in there. And there's, you know, there's sometimes similarities, but then you have groups where it's like people are all over the board, right? So there's just some differences there. And then the third pillar is the energy, and they kind of, this is where things kind of get a little, as I like to say, woo-woo with it, you know. But their definition of energy is like you just click with some people and you don't with others. And, you know, so even if you're spending a lot of time with a coworker who might be in your same stage of life, if for whatever reason you don't like fully click, then it's going to have an impact on the type and the depth of the friendship that you can have. So I thought this was really fascinating. You know, when you look at that, particularly at the study that was done, you know, by this, University of Kansas. But just again, let me say that to be a casual friend, you have to spend 72 hours together, and then to be close friends, over 200 hours. So this is why, you know, do you have 200 disposable hours? Well, what that means is by doing life together over time, you're starting to clock some of that. But it just doesn't look the same as, you know, I remember like you step out into your hallway in the dorm at like 11:30, and it's like, who wants to go to Taco Bell? You know, now, first of all, once you get to midlife, you shouldn't eat that much Taco Bell. You know, it's arguable, should you eat that much even when you're in your late teens, early 20s? Probably not, but definitely not when you get to be in midlife. But you know, you walk outside your front door, Brian, if you yelled that at 11:30 at night, I don't know what would happen, right?
I don't either. Probably nothing, because everyone's asleep.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, I thought that was fascinating to think of, and obviously we didn't have time to go into all this. And again, I think this author, they've got some really good things. They do a good description of the problem. When they start getting into their prescription of the solution, that's where it's not really biblically based, and we're not even going to talk about that. But I think there's some good data to consider.
So I'm going on a limb, Luke and Jeremy, from things you've said in the past, that in college you were very social. There were friends that you hung out with in college. Now, both of your parents, kids are very different ages from one another. So next Sunday we're ending the series, hearing some stories from people. And one of the questions I asked one of the couples was, you know, how has, in particular, connecting shifted over time? I thought their answer was really good. Stay tuned for more. But what has that experience been like for you guys?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you mentioned was just the expectations. Like, I think expectations of other people's disposable time, and like how often will those overlap. And so, you know, in college you can, hey, tomorrow do you want to get lunch with me? And that's like planning really far ahead in college. Like you really plan.
Tomorrow's like a year away.
Yeah. But you know, now it might be like, you know what? I don't have time for about 4 weeks, but 4 weeks from now, maybe we can grab lunch.
Right,
and so that's just kind of, you know, that's a little bit extreme. You might be able to pull off in 2 weeks, but it's just a lot harder to schedule time with people. And so I think one of the things that has been true for me has been as I live on mission with other people, that's actually where I begin to clock a lot of time. And so I think like a practical way of living on mission was when I was a volunteer. I came back from college, I came back from K-State, and I just joined a volunteer team, and I began to build friendships with people on that volunteer team. And so I think just from that, like as I was working alongside, and now looking back on that, like I can think of 3 guys off the top of my head who I started volunteering with who have become really deep friends over time. One of them was in my wedding. Another one now I'm doing a lot of parenting with, and another one who actually mentored me, and now I get to mentor his kids, which is just a lot came as I was doing on mission with people. Yeah. But that kind of came back from what are the time windows that I can get with people? And so groups and serving was just a great way to do that, where you're seeing regular people. And again, it didn't happen that fast. Like college, you in your first week, you can pick your friends, and that's your friends you can walk with over 4 years. But it just takes the expectation of it'll take longer. But if you choose to kind of lay your preferences aside and see like what's going to be helpful for people and try to move God's mission forward, that's actually a great place to find friends.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, what he said.
Okay, moving on.
Well, I think even the transition from college to adulthood, there's still other like steps. There's other rungs. You know, when you're out of college but you're single, you're working 40 hours a week, but you still have your evenings, you still have your weekends, and so it's still fairly easy to get time with people. You get married. Now you're both working, you want to spend time together, so you have less time to go with your friends. Unless you and your wife have the same friends, makes it easier. Mm-hmm. That doesn't always happen. But then you start having kids, and you have far, far, far less time. And like Luke was talking about, I think at that point, just making time to go out and spend one-on-one time with someone, especially when your kids are young, is very, very difficult. But if you're in group, something that hopefully is already of a high value, that's where you're going to naturally interact with people. If you're in a serving team, that's where you're naturally going to interact with people. Just people at church. You know, if you're staying around for a few minutes after the service is over, that's where you're going to be already in the same place with people. And so that's where you're going to be interacting with people.
Yeah, I think I got, along those lines, I got a good piece of advice in college. I was in the theater department, don't judge me, and one of the upperclassmen said to the incoming freshman that year, said, one of the great things about the theater is you're in a lot of small classes together, you're in productions together, and it kind of gives you an instant click into some people at college, and it shrinks the university way down. And I remember, which it did, and then I moved down here to go to seminary, and I was lonely as lonely can be. And I remembered, find a group that will shrink things down. And I came to the seminary because there was sort of an arts degree that they had. And so I started like, well, let me show up to rehearsals and all that kind of stuff so I can kind of get around people. And that was very manageable. And I've learned that's also true of churches. Churches can, like you were talking about, we have anywhere like 700 unique people that may come on a Sunday over the course of 8 weeks. On a particular Sunday, it's around 450 or so. There's no way to really be best friends with 450 people. And it might be intimidating. This is my first Sunday and it's 400. I don't know anybody. It's just, if you will get a part of a serving group, if you'll join a midweek group, the church shrinks way down and it becomes much more manageable, and you start to know people, they will start to know you, and the experience of connecting becomes a lot more enjoyable. It's not intimidating of like, I don't even know where to start. But I think that's one of the huge benefits of serving in groups, is just to shrink the church down.
I think one of the things just that, there's the group time, and so people who might already be going to groups at our church, you might be already connected through there, but like, but how do I go deeper? Like, I think the question is also like, how do I actually, develop deeper friendships? I think it's just a concept that's been really helpful for me is blending. Like, it's sometimes not creating new spaces. It's just more of inviting people into things you're already doing. And so I think sometimes for us, that's just, going over to a friend's house for dinner or inviting them over for dinner. We got to eat. So we just might as well blend it with other people.
Gotta eat.
Got to eat. And so, or, if there's a certain activity that, my wife does this with other moms of, hey, we're going to take our kids to go do this. Well, how about I invite another mom just to come with me and come alongside, whether that's going to the zoo or, sometimes it might be like, hey, we need to run an errand. Do you just want to go run an errand together? And so just if you can do stuff with people as you're doing it in the flow of life, that really helps. I think just for me as, a work day, sometimes buying up meals is helpful, like getting a breakfast before work, getting lunch getting lunch together, or usually dinner. I try to keep that with my family to be there. But I think just if I'm trying to get time one-on-one with somebody, breakfast and lunch tend to be ways that if I can use those intentionally, I still got to eat. So how to make the most of those?
Yeah. I think, a couple of other things that I thought about adding this in, but I couldn't find a way to, do it and keep the time where it needs to be. But one of the things we talked about, that we talked about this back in October at our men's breakfast, I think it's really relevant here to this, is, isolation is deadly. That's why we need to do life with other people. And we have someone calling in now. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Sorry, I thought I'd silence that.
But isolation can actually be deadly. That's why we need to do life with other people. And so there's this passage, this episode, if you will, from Mark chapter 2. This is these guys that they bring their friend to Jesus, and he's on the mat. So I'm just going to read it here. And when speaking of Jesus, he returned to Capernaum after some days, it was reported that he was at home, and many were gathered together so that there was no more room, not even at the door. And he was preaching the word to them, and they came, these are the friends, bringing to him a paralytic carried by 4 men. And when they could not get near him because of the crowd, they removed the roof above him, and when they had made an opening, they let the bed down on which the paralytic lay. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Son, your sins are forgiven." And I think what we need, especially as men, this was the context of me originally sharing this, but I mean, this applies to everyone, men and women, followers of Jesus. We all need mat carriers. We need people that if we are far from Jesus, if we're lost in, some kind of sin or rebellion, we need people who have faith that we don't have in the moment to literally pick us up and carry us back to him. It's like metaphorically, but really bring us back to Jesus to help us get on track. And the reality is at some point, each and every one of us is going to be on the mat. And we got to have those people around us. So, so the question I challenge the guys with, and I'll just challenge our listeners, is do you have 4 people that you could write their name that know you well enough and love you well enough, and if you got off track, they would come and they would drag you back to Jesus? If you do, that's awesome. That's like a gift. If you don't, where are you going to find those people? And I heard someone else say this, and I was like, man, that's so good. Basically, like friends are like a retirement account.
That's good.
You can't start to make friends when you need them, right? Yeah. When's the best time to start retirement account? A long time ago. So, what are you going to do now to build relationships? And it takes time. How are you going to get those 74 hours? How are you going to get those 200 hours in so that down the road when you actually really need people? And this is one of the things I think, you see this on a large scale, and you see it on smaller scales, but there's a trend, and I think you see a lot of people, and I'll just say guys because a lot of them are guys. At the time of this recording, there was recently another kind of famous author in his 60s that just came out that he's disqualified himself and all that, and it was an 8-year-long affair going. And why are all these guys in their 60s blowing themselves up? It's because I think they get to a place where you talk a lot about accountability when you're young and you think of one side, but then you get to some age, I don't know when it is, but then it's like, I got this, I don't need it, nobody knows me, and then people end up blowing up themselves. And you actually, a 20-year-old who blows themselves up does a whole lot less damage than a 60-something-year-old. Because, I mean, on one hand, I mean, like, you know, three of us are in our 40s and a couple of you are in your 30s. But, I mean, honestly, like, I'm not going to take a 21-year-old all that seriously right now at 47. I'm not going to, like, base my life on all the advice and everything that they give. Now, they might have a lot together and they might be respectable. But I can look upline and I see some guys and I'm like, man, if that guy blows himself up, like, what does that do, you know, for me? And what does that do for my thought on things? So but that's why we got to be in relationships. You might feel like you don't need them right now, but there's going to come a day when you need the relationship. And do you have the relationship? And the day you need it, it's too late. You can't start it then. So we need each other. We need to do life together.
So another topic of contributing, I think you briefly skimmed the surface of spiritual gifts. I think you put a list on the screen. I can only assume that you've pulled that together before. But I guess there's any number of confusions that we have about spiritual gifts of what talents or abilities was I born with versus, well, now I'm a follower of Jesus and the Bible says that I've been given a spiritual gift, and sometimes the gift equals the ability I had before. Sometimes it's different, and sometimes making that leap. Anyway, I think for any number of, whether you've been walking with Jesus for a long time or you're still trying to figure some stuff out, spiritual gifts can be a point of confusion. So if you could sort of summarize what you have understood, Matt, about spiritual gifts and things that would be helpful for our listeners to understand.
Yeah. So it was actually 2 years ago in January, we did a series called The Faithful Steward, and we looked at these different areas of life that we have to steward, you know, time, talent, treasure, truth, and then I couldn't come up with a good T word, so it was just relationships. Those were each of the weeks of what we looked at. But when it comes to, you know, the talent, we got to steward the talents we have. Here are just some thoughts in trying to understand this. So I think under the big category of talents, there's sort of three subcategories. There's natural abilities, as you mentioned, and these are like inherent or innate capabilities that individuals possess without any specific training or conscious effort. So this is like some of your athletic ability. This is artistic talent, mathematical aptitude, maybe natural aptitude for languages. Like it's really easy for some people to learn languages, and then there's people like me that I'm like, I'm struggling to master the English language, my one and only, right? And you know, so I think like both of my kids, but one of them in particular, I think they really have some natural abilities in the area of music. So we're trying to kind of encourage and foster that. Then there's skills, and skills can be learned or developed abilities that are the result of training and practice and experience. And over time, you can actually grow in the skill, even if you don't have a natural ability in that area. So what are we talking about here? Like time management is actually a skill. Decision making is a skill. Communication, writing, cooking. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And then this third subcategory that only applies to followers of Jesus is spiritual gifts. So people who are not yet followers of Jesus can have natural abilities and they can have skills, right? But only followers of Jesus get a spiritual gift. And so the definition I shared, spiritual gift, special ability given to all followers of Jesus at the moment of salvation, to be used for God's glory and to minister to others. And then that was when we put that chart up, and that was 26 different spiritual gifts that come from, you know, a handful of different passages. So I tried to kind of do a comprehensive list there. If you want to read this on your own, you go to Romans 12, 1 Corinthians 12, Ephesians 4:11 through 12, and 1 Peter 4:10. Those are kind of the summary where we find a lot of these. But when it comes to spiritual gifts, you know, every follower of Jesus has at least one, and many believers do have more than one. And there are some gifts that tend to kind of go together. Like there's like a gift mix where someone might have these, a couple of 2, 3, maybe even 4, or they could be kind of all over the place. But the thing is, spiritual gifts are often discovered over time, gradually. Yeah. So you have at least one the moment that you surrender to Jesus, but you won't just all of a sudden you're like, okay, I just finished surrendering to Jesus, and now I know that I have the gift of giving, or I have the gift of administration, or I have the gift of teaching, or whatever it is. Spiritual gifts, they're not the same as the gift of the Spirit. The Holy Spirit, he comes into the life at the moment of conversion. So there's spiritual gifts, and then there's the actual gift of the Holy Spirit coming to reside in us. Sometimes people confuse those. Spiritual gifts are also, they're not the same as the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit relates to Christ-like character, this internal change that's happening over time, but gifts rather relate to service, participating. Gifts are for effective service and edification of the body, so that all things may be glorified through Jesus Christ. So I think here are some questions somebody could ask when you're thinking about spiritual gifts. Well, have I received salvation? Like, am I a follower of Jesus? And the answer is, like, if you're wondering, do I have spiritual gifts and what are they? But you've not yet decided to follow Jesus, then the answer is you don't have any. You can have skills and you can have natural abilities, but you won't have spiritual gifts. And then am I if I have followed Jesus, decided to surrender to Jesus, am I walking in the fellowship with the Lord? Because sometimes, like when we get into sin, we may be a follower of Jesus, but we're not walking in fellowship with him. Well, then that can have an impact on some things. And then am I willing to develop my gifts? So when it comes to developing the gifts, the 3 E's, there's educate. I need to know a little bit, like they exist. Sometimes people are like, I really got to study the gifts, and maybe you need to know what they are, and you need to know that they exist. But then, so we need a little education, we need a lot of exercise, and that is just participating and getting involved in the ministry. And then you evaluate. You're going to be open to evaluating counsel from other believers, leaders above you, strengths, weaknesses, way to improve. And I think one of the ways that people discover gifts, you can go online and find all kinds of spiritual gift tests, and that'll tell you a little something, but it's when you're working in the context of teams and you have leaders over you or other team members saying, man, I think you really have the gift of hospitality. I think you really have the gift of teaching. I think you really have the gift of, whatever it is. And then just a couple of warnings about this. So there's spiritual gifts are not just for personal use. Like, you've been given that gift, not just for yourself. They're not gained by merit or begging. Sometimes people really want to be gifted in something, and it's like, God, gift me in this way. Well, he may not answer that prayer because that's not how he intends you to serve the body. I think spiritual gifts can be abused too. And discovery of the gifts, it's really important that you spend time to discover them and develop them. They shouldn't be a cause for any kind of discouragement. And sometimes people start getting into comparison, right? And it's like, well, he has the gift of wisdom, and I really want the gift of wisdom. Or he has the gift of teaching, and I want to be a teacher. But then the motive, why do you want to be a teacher? Well, I want people to listen to me, and I want to be able to stand up on stage, and it can be, people can get into comparison, and you can get discouraged. Don't do that. Like, God gave you the gift that he gave you, and he gave the other person the gift that he gave the other person. They should never be a source of pride, because it's your spiritual gift. God gave that to you, not for you, and not to get puffed up, but so that you can serve the overall body. Sometimes it's easy for people to project their gifts onto other people, and they, because they have a gift, they think somebody else should have that gift. And this is where, some of the gifts, you get into more maybe charismatic circles, and it's like, well, you should have the gift of tongues, or you should have the gift of this, or you should have the gift of that. And it's like, well, should you, or is it what God gave you, right? Scripture also is interesting. Scripture commands that all believers participate in certain ministry activities regardless of their gifting. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Faith is a gift. Service is a gift. Mercy is a gift. Evangelism is a gift. Giving and generosity is a gift. But you know what? If I don't have the gift of mercy, that doesn't mean I get a pass on mercy. I still have to exercise mercy. If I and this is where I think sometimes we misunderstand the gift of evangelism. Often, the gift of evangelism is more about helping train, develop, and encourage people towards evangelism. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just mean that it's easy for you to evangelize people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people think, well, I don't have the gift of evangelism. I don't have to do that. No, again, we're all called to be servant ambassadors. Or giving. Some people really have the gift of generosity, and you just see their life. I mean, they're generous in so many different ways, and they give, and it's like, how can you give that much and live on this little? And they're like, that's no big deal. Well, they might have the gift of generosity, but everybody else who doesn't have the gift of generosity, they don't get a pass, and they don't get excluded of like, I don't have to give anything. But sometimes we confuse those things. So, and then like faith, faith is required to become a follower of Jesus. And every Christian needs to exercise faith day in and day out. But the gift of faith is seen in those who maybe have sort of several notches above, and it just seems so easy for them to trust God and follow into big things. I mean, and then you go back earlier, we were talking about call to ministry. Mm-hmm. Not everybody who's called to vocational ministry might have the gift of faith, but you're sure going to have to exercise it. And then sometimes, though, you see some people, whether they're ordinary people or they're leaders in the church or kingdom leaders, and you're like, how can you trust God for that in that big of a way? Well, that person might have the gift of faith, and so it kind of gives you some extra oomph, So it's ultimately it's our responsibility to develop our talents, whatever they are, whether it's a natural ability, whether it's a skill or a spiritual gift. To develop them, use them to the full potential, and use them ultimately for the kingdom. We want to use everything that we have for God's glory. So, those are just some things. Hopefully that adds a little more color. Again, if I'd gone into this sort of like taken another 7 minutes in a different direction, that doesn't necessarily bring us back to where are you at in specifically being a 3C disciple and what do you need to know, be, and do. But about gifts and how to use them, this does fall into the know, be, do. You got to know that gifts exist, and you got to know that God wants you to exercise them, and you got to do exercise them. So, those are a couple more things.
What makes me think of this verse, 2 Timothy. Paul's talking to Timothy, who is a pastor. He says, "For this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God which is in you." And I was thinking as you were talking, my youngest got some Legos for Christmas. I think that's a lot of times that's like when God gives you the gift. There's a box, it's got some bags of parts, and there's an instruction manual, and then you have to work at turning that into the thing that is in the box. So, like right now he's opening up bag 1 and going through all the minutia of all the little parts and following the plan and trying to put it together. I think as you are serving the Lord, as you are just doing the things like the one another's and all of those things, you'll start to discover, I'm fanning into flame the gift. I'm discovering either as people are inputting, or I'm finding that this is really joyful for me to do X, Y, or Z. You are fanning that gift into flame. You are honing that raw material into something. So it's a lifelong thing. It's not it came to me fully developed and I will be awesome as these things. So like sometimes we'll get people who say like, I have the gift of teaching. They've never stood in front of a crowd before. They may have the gift of teaching. They may have passion for teaching, but that, even though the gift may be there is a whole lot of skill that also needs to exist with teaching to help fan that gift of teaching into flame.
Yeah. Well, you probably definitely see that in the area of music and arts.
Oh, heavens, yes.
There could be a desire, and even a level of gifting, but you have to practice. You have to, hone your craft, if you will.
Another child got an electric guitar for Christmas, and they don't know, they love the guitar. They don't know, but maybe a chord or two, and they don't know how to tune it. So yeah, there's a lot of honing that needs to happen at our house for us to enjoy the electric guitar. It's very different.
I think, I'll just throw the question like to Luke, Jeremy. Like if you think about your spiritual gifts, how did that work for you? Like discovering it over time. I just get kind of practical for a second. What did that look like in your life?
Yeah, I think often it was I was doing stuff with other believers, and they were farther ahead in their walk with God than I was. And as I was doing stuff, they'd say, I think you actually might have this gift. And it was like, oh, I haven't thought of that category before. And so I think one of those is the gift of teaching. And I think part of that was in the Antioch project. Brian was my mentor. Mm-hmm. And I think I can remember one of our conversations where you were like, hey, take every opportunity you have to speak in front of people. And so that was part of it. He I think he saw in me like I could teach, but I still needed to hone it. And so that was challenging me to really try to excel in that gift and use it and learn to have more skill in doing it. Because what I tend to do, sometimes I tend just to wing it. Like, mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I don't need to prepare for this. I'll just speak in front of people because I'm a good speaker. But I've learned over time, no, here's the amount of preparation I need to do in order to do this with excellence, to honor the Lord. So I think just that's a practical thing I've seen in that gift.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. I think the biggest thing is just trying different things, especially if there's something I'm interested in. I think, hey, that sounds like it might be fun, might be exciting. Try it. If it's some piece of ministry, as much as you can. And some things are going to stick, some things are not. I think the other side is, God is going to lead us down the path to where we're going to be able to use the gifts that He's given us. So I wouldn't fret and worry about, oh, what if I never discover the gift that God has given me? I'm going to be 90 years old and not. If you're following God, if you're being obedient, He's going to lead you to the right thing at the right time. And so I wouldn't go down the other path of being so worried. You're frantically trying everything. I'm trying every instrument. I'm trying every. Be obedient to God where He has you, but try different things.
He's not going to let the gift go unused.
Yeah. It falls into the category of God is going to equip you for what He has for you, and part of that equipping is you recognizing your gift and you honing your gift, as long as you're being obedient to Him.
Well, and the answer, I think what you're getting at, just be very direct, is, so I don't know what my gift is. The answer is not, well, I sit and do nothing because I don't know what my gift is.
Right.
I can even remember, I think one of my gifts, is administration. And people are like, oh, administration, that's not very exciting, right? But I remember when I was in college.
For you, it's probably exciting.
But when I was in college, here's how I kind of discovered that. And when I was in college in the church I was going to, the pastor was very entrepreneurial, vision oriented, didn't have a detailed bone in his body, right? And he's starting to kind of mentor and disciple me. And then I'm coming around and we're talking about things and he's helping me grow, but then we're talking about some things about the church and I'm asking him questions. And then lo and behold, it's we're just it was a young church plant, very disorganized in some ways. I'm well, I could just I don't remember the details now, but let's say I'm why don't you just make a spreadsheet about that?
It's my language right there.
All right, do it. And then, but one thing after another was wow, this way that I think and organize and put things together, I can actually really be a benefit to the church. And I don't play any instruments. I can't sing in the band and I can't do whatever. But wow, look what I got to do behind the scenes. And nobody other than the pastor and me knew that I was doing this stuff, but then, kind of do it. And then it's years later, guess what? For 10 years, I served as an executive pastor. Mm-hmm. You think you need some gifts of administration to be an executive pastor? Yeah, you do. So So you also never know what God's going to ultimately do with that gift as you begin to exercise and serve.
Well, and I think so I come from an arts background, not known for its great administrative skills, the artists. But I think if I could speak to the seemingly boring and drab beige gift of administration, I think for any creative endeavor to start with an idea and end with a thing, there's a whole lot of admin that needs to happen because artists are not that administrative. They need deadlines. They need some help getting, the thing that God has put on their heart to finish takes a lot of admin to get that across the goal line. And I think that's probably true in kids ministry, student ministry, group. Like there's a lot of, with 450 people on a Sunday, there's a whole lot of organizing needs to happen. So I think it's possible that things like preaching and evangelism and giving get a lot of press and like, oh, well, I will know that I'm really holy if I'm one of those things. And something like helping people and encouraging them and administration may get less attention because it's just nice things that people do or something. If that is really what God has put on your heart to do, swing for the fences, because a lot of that stuff is crucial for the success of the whole ministry to happen. It's not just the front of stage stuff that needs to happen. There's all the backstage stuff that really needs to happen in order for the front of stage stuff to look good,
And then there's, so I don't know if anybody caught this. I'll just make final comment on this. So there's the seemingly the gifts that everybody wants, right? The prominent ones, like you said, and then the ones people are like, well, I don't know about that. And then there's the gifts people definitely don't want. There's like the gifts of celibacy. There's the gift of voluntary poverty, martyrdom, and these all I think they were italicized on the screen, and I got this whole list from a book that kind of went into all of these, and and so some of these they went ahead and included them into the list of 26, and some of them are argued, are they gifts, are they not? But it's like, but here's the thing, and then this is the truth, is like, if you really do have those gifts, then like since God gifted you do that way, you're going to be able to do it, right? Yeah. And it's the ones that, that's just like, that every junior high boy is like, God, please don't give me that, that gift, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, most of them end up getting married, and you don't have that gift, But if you did have that gift, it came from the Lord, and He intends for you to use it. And there are martyrs, in church history, and there's even common martyrs. I mean, just one thing I'd say on that is, if you've never read Fox's Book of Martyrs, you want to talk about a really hard book to read, and then like think about your own faith, and it's like, wow, like I'm a wimp. I
don't want to be a martyr, but I'm sure encouraged by them.
Yeah. So that's, add that to your 2026 reading list if you've never read it. I think there was
that's Fox, a little more E, right? F-O-X-E.
Yeah, a little. I think there's also a little more of a modern version, because it was a little bit in the Shakespearean King James type language, but there was one that came out that was kind of a modern translation. Same story, is easier to read, and so anyway.
Well, that wraps up episode 2. I think this is possibly the best episode of the year. Hopefully next week we will have also
even better.
The best episode of the year. Thanks for watching, listening to the podcast. If you think this would be an encouragement to anybody, feel free to share and send it on to somebody else. This Sunday, we're wrapping up the Becoming a 3C Disciple series again, where we're going to be hearing stories from just regular everyday people who've been committed and connecting and contributing to the kingdom over a number of years, and I think you'll be encouraged by hearing those stories. And for those of you who have been following in real time, the chart that Matt has been showing about how these relate to the no-be-do triangle, we get an extra column. So you'll want to come back and find out what's in the extra
adding
column.
To the chart.
What's on that chart. So if you thought you knew it all, nope. So
actually, somebody told me Sunday, they were like, I'm a little bit lopsided because there's 3 and not 4. I need 4 to round it out. And I said, wait till next Sunday, because there's a 4 thing that we're gonna add in.
Extra row too.
And Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm like,
we get an extra row, an extra
complete
column,
the 4 for you on Sunday.
Yeah. So be praying about how you can take a next step in being committed and connected and contributing. And we will see you on Sunday. If not, then we'll hopefully catch you back here next week for the Sunday Extra podcast.